Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Esoteric Literacy. I felt called to make this video. As you know, I don't post that often. I really only post a video if I really feel called to doing it, because there are plenty of people on YouTube making videos about esoteric subjects, and I only like to add my voice to the choir if I feel like I have something worth adding. And this is like a hot topic, so I figured I should make a video about the concept of disclosure. Everybody's talking about it these days for the past couple of years, and it just reminds me of when I was a kid in the 90s. There was a whole disclosure movement back then as well, so this is not a new thing. A lot of people think this is new. You know, you have official mainstream news reports that are always talking about UFOs these days, Navy officers talking about seeing flying Tic Tacs and all of this sort of stuff. And people think this is news. It's not. I think I just want to go over like what is disclosure. I've noticed on the internet, I've noticed over the last 30 years that people have all sorts of different ideas as to what disclosure is, what it means, why people talk about it, what they think will happen. And a lot of people just don't even know what disclosure is. They hear the word and they get sort of an idea of what it might be. They get that it's a very popular thing to talk about these days. It's very sensationalistic. And there are many people who just aren't familiar with the concept, or there are many people who have their own views as to what the concept is and what it means. So I'm going to just address all of this. I'm going to try to be unbiased, but of course I'm going to interject my own opinions and views on the matter. It's kind of impossible to avoid that. I'll try to describe this concept from the perspectives of many different types of people and many different groups, why people talk about it, and basically what I think it is, what other people think it is, and why it's such a popular topic. I essentially just want to equip you with the ability to think about disclosure, to come to your own conclusions about it, not to give you any conclusions. So the first thing that we should discuss is that most people who talk about disclosure are trying to convince you to agree with them. They have a conclusion about it, and they want you to agree with that conclusion. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I don't like to give you conclusions, or I don't want to tell you what to think. I want to help teach you how to think so that you can come to your own conclusions, do your own research, use your own ability to reason, your own intuition, and I don't want to pollute your thinking or guide you in a certain way. I just want to equip you with the tools so that you can think about things for yourself. This is why I have fewer than 200 subscribers at the moment, because I've noticed that there are lots of channels that discuss spiritual or philosophical or paranormal subjects, and they've got 250,000 subscribers, 500,000 subscribers, and all of them have one thing in common, is that they are telling you their conclusions, and they want you to agree with those conclusions. They say things like, this is how this is how this works, this is how the spiritual world is set up, this is how the material world is set up, this is what this phenomenon means, this is what that phenomenon means. And it's all revealed dogma. That's what they teach, is something that, like, this is the way it is, this is how this works. And they're not telling you how they came to those conclusions. Sometimes they do, and they say, I'm a psychic and the messengers told me this. Or, they say, I did my research and this is the only possible way to think about this. And that's a very sexy way of making YouTube videos and social media videos and blog posts and radio interviews and podcasts or what have you, is just to tell people what to think. And people like that because it's easier than thinking through it on their own. Unfortunately, I don't mean this derogatorily, but most people are like sheep. Very few people are leaders or have the ability to think for themselves. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, people have busy lives. They're not interested in that. Someone interested in gardening who's really into it isn't going to care about researching paranormal phenomena. So when they hear someone talk about paranormal phenomena and they're interested in it, they'll just believe whatever they hear and move on. because they live a different kind of life. They're interested in different things, and that's fine. But there's a problem with the people who just tell you what to think and say, this is it. Because people are way too willing to believe whatever they think an expert is talking about. And you see this a lot on YouTube, especially in like the New Age community or the so-called spiritual community and stuff like that, is this is how the world works. These are the, messengers of light, and this is how everything happens, and just believe what I say because I did my research or because the messengers told me and my psychic experiences and yada yada. And like, I'm not against those YouTube channels. I watch them. I find them extremely fascinating. Some of them are probably rooted in some type of truth. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just different strokes for different folks. So the first thing I want to what I'm trying to say is there's the path of revelation and the path of reason. And ever since I was a kid, ever since I was formulating my own thoughts and experiences, I've followed the path of reason. I don't take anyone's word for anything. I have to research and think through things on my own all the time. It's just how I'm wired. It's how I'm built. I cannot accept revelation from other people. I don't care if your dogma is true. I need to find out that it's true. I need to verify that it's true. So I don't teach what to think. I teach how to think. And the thing with the word disclosure is that it is inherently dogmatic. It is inherently, I'm going to disclose something for you. Something was hidden that you don't know about, that I know about, and I'm going to tell you. Now, the very concept of disclosure is an Anglo-Latin word, and it's a sort of sanitized word of revelation or apocalypse. You have the Greek apocalypse, or apokalypsis, which is to hide, and apokalypsis, which is to disclose or to unhide. Apocalypse is to unhide something, to disclose something. So you have the phrase apocalypse all over the English-speaking world, especially in the United States, when talking about disclosure. You could replace the word disclosure with the word apocalypsis or apocalypse, and it means exactly the same thing. So there's already a religious and mind-altering component to even thinking about disclosure. It's already something that is primordially trying to get inside of your mind, inside of your consciousness, and to get you to think of this in a messianic, world-changing, fundamentally reality-altering way. They want you to think about reality the way they want you to think about it. That we're going to change your fundamental perceptions along the lines that we want based on this thing we're telling you that is previously hidden that we are now going to reveal. And it will basically pull the floor out from under you, it will radically alter your perceptions, and now you will be in a new world with your new perceptions. So we must always be wary of people who are coming at us with this, whether it's a CIA officer talking about UFOs, or it's a New Ager talking about hyperdimensional, low-density or higher-density beings. And you'll notice they confuse that all the time. They call higher dimensional beings higher density, but that a higher density being would be lower because it's higher density meaning heavier. So like a lower density being would be a higher dimensional being, and they mix it up all the time, which kind of tells you their inability to think through these things and use language properly. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. We should be wary of anybody who offers us disclosure, who offers us I have some hidden knowledge and I'm going to tell it to you. You get it everywhere you look, from the established religious institutions to the New Agers to the government and to occultists to scientists in their universities. Everybody says, all these types of people want to claim that they have the knowledge of reality, and you got to learn it from them. Otherwise, you won't learn it at all. They have the keys to the kingdom. They've got the key to the secret treasure chest. They'll open it for you as long as you go to their college class, or you go to their religious institution, or you watch their YouTube videos, or you pay for their law of manifestation lesson booklet, or you listen to their CIA officers on some podcast or other, whatever it is, they've got the keys to the kingdom. You don't have access to it unless you get those keys from this particular person, this particular group, and believe what they tell you about it. This is how religious institutions and governments are created. They get a whole bunch of people to alter their perceptions of reality to accept their authority. Now, this goes to the concept of millenarianism, or the millennium. This is an ancient concept. Basically, every 1,000 years, based on whatever calendar you're looking at, whenever there's like a 1,000-year mark, there's going to be some cult or other that's like, oh, everything's going to change because 1,000 years went by. This next year ends in a 000, therefore some crazy shit's about to happen. In the year 999 AD, you had all the people saying that the world was going to end in the year 1000, or Christ was going to come in the year 1000, or the Antichrist was going to come in the year 1000. You had people who thought that the world was just going to disappear in the year 1000, and New Year's Eve 999 was a crazy year. You had all sorts of Christians and cultists and people, Muslims and Jews all over the world, just thinking that the world was going to end. And they went to bed that night thinking they weren't going to wake up, and lo and behold, it was just another day. You saw the same thing in Y2K in 1999. Everybody thought civilization was going to come crashing down because of some date error in the code, 2-digit dates. We're going to reset everything back to the year 1900, and everything was going to get wiped out, and everybody lost their minds, and you had doomsday preppers collecting water and storing non-perishable food and all that sort of stuff, because they believed, it's another 1,000 years. Things are going to happen. You had the SS officers in the 20th century, the Nazis, who wanted to reset the world at the year 0 or year 1, and that they were going to have their 1,000-year Reich because they represented the great awakening of mankind. They were like the superior race who's going to usher in a better civilization, or whatever their belief was. They're going to disclose all the secret ancient knowledge that they possessed, and they're going to lead the world into a golden age, a 1,000-year golden age. You had the New Agers a few decades before. You had Annie Besant trying to usher in her messiah in the form of that little boy named Jiddu Krishnamurti. She basically groomed this child to believe that he was the messiah of the new world. This was in the early 20th, the late 19th, early 20th century, that he was being groomed to be a world teacher, as they called him, and he was going to change the world and create a new spiritual civilization and a new religion that everybody would follow. Of course, he got wise to the bullshit, and he quit the Theosophical Society and went his own way. Good for him. God bless that kid for snapping out of it by the time he was 17 or 18 years old. And he went his own way, and it never happened. They aborted this fake messiah thing. And you can see, though, when it is successful, it's usually manipulated. When people start talking about disclosure this and revelations that and apocalypse this, some of these cults and groups can have success in establishing their authority. In ancient Egypt, the pharaohs were said to be Horus, basically human incarnations of Osiris. They're sort of Christ figure. Osiris was like the Egyptian version of Christ, and Horus is said to be like the son of Osiris, which in practical terms meant a human incarnation. So there could be many Horuses, Hori, and the pharaoh was said to be a Horus. So there may have been a truthful impulse to this religion, because messianic religions have a truthful impulse. A messianic spiritual tradition is basically a tradition that's like Raja Yoga or Kriya Yoga, where you become enlightened and you are saved, you reach a higher state of consciousness, and that gets mythologized and folklorized into like a god-man is going to save the whole world. Essentially, the kernel of truth in it is the grace of God and your efforts to achieve that grace are going to save you and create higher consciousness for you. They're going to liberate you from suffering, your karma and all that. But then people will manipulate that idea and say, no, it's not for the individual, it's for the collective all at once. And if you follow my government and my teaching, I will save the whole collective all at once. The whole civilization will be saved under my guidance. I am the Messiah, or I am a representative of the Messiah. Let me establish this government. Believe what I tell you, do what I tell you, become part of my civilization, let me rule over you, and everybody will be saved. And so this is how the pharaonic government essentially was established. This was how the Catholic government in the medieval era was established in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. You had the Catholic Church finally establishing itself on the book of Revelation and the revelations of the New Testament, basically declaring, our version of this messianic truth requires that we become your government now. And they had the Nicene Councils, the Inter-Nicene Councils, whatever you want to call them, with that the first one was under Emperor Constantine, and they eventually took all the Christian literature and scripture that had been written over the last few centuries, and they sanitized it, they edited it, they got rid of the books they didn't like or that confused them, and then they established what was known as the Latin Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate, and so on, that they're sort of official document, they're official Christianity. And anybody who possessed books that were not from the official canon set by this council would essentially be killed. The Catholic Church killed more Christians than anybody else. They just killed all non-Catholic Christians. And they established their government over the known world. And for 1,000 years, they were the government of the world because they claimed to possess the knowledge of disclosure, the knowledge of revelation. They said, we have the super great spiritual knowledge that will change the world for the better. The Roman Empire is sort of, collapsed. We're now in a bit of a dark age here, and I'll save you from the dark age if you just, look at this spiritual revelation, look at this revelation of knowledge that I have that comes from Syria and Jerusalem, and it's been kept hidden, and only obscure philosophers knew about it, but now I know about it, and now it's going to become the principle for this new government, in hoc signo vinces, as Constantine saw the cross in the sky, which is akin to UFO phenomena, and he heard the voice in his head that said, in this sign you shall conquer, and that was when he decided Christianity will be the religion of my new empire. And they claimed disclosure, that they were disclosing this amazing spiritual revelation, that as long as you believe in this, your civilization will be great, you'll live in a utopia, everything will work out, just let us rule over you. And that's how the Catholic government was established over the known world. And it lasted 1,000 years until, Martin Luther nailed his complaints to the door, and then it started to fall apart. So Martin Luther, the father of the Protestant movement, indirectly the father of the humanist movement. Once it was known you could question the Catholic Church and you didn't necessarily have to agree with it, this began the humanist movement, which led to the liberalism of the 18th century, 19th century, which leads to materialism, scientific materialism, atheism, and things like that. And with the onset of scientific materialism, there is I forget who said it, a philosopher who said now there's a God-shaped hole in all Westerners' hearts because they lost their faith in the Catholic Church because of its abuses and its strictures and its domineering, law and culture. People didn't want to play ball anymore after 1,000 years, and they were led down the scientific revelation where they started putting their faith in philosophers and individualists and scientists who offered a way of viewing reality that was non-Catholic. And then a parallel movement to the scientific materialist movement was the New Age movement that began about 100 years, maybe 200 years in earnest, 200 years after the scientific movement began. But it really did begin alongside of it Because when you have, like, Isaac Newton and Kepler and these people, you also have, like, Tycho Brahe and Giordano Bruno and these other, like, they're like the first New Agers, essentially, talking about aliens and space and all sorts of different things like that, and angels of light that communicate with them. You had Jacob Burma, all sorts of people, Johann Trithemius and Nicholas of Cusa, and all these sorts of... They're essentially New Agers, and they're kind of Christian, kind of scientists, and kind of New Age hippie crystal grippers, and that opened the door for New Ageism, which would come later in the form of the Helena Blavatskys and the Theosophical Society, the Annie Besants, Alice Bailey, Nicholas and Helena Roerich, and all those types of people. So you had these parallel currents, scientific materialism and New Ageism, and they both kind of just existed as reactions against Catholicism. Now, I'd give a little more credence to the scientific movement as being an independent movement that was genuinely seeking knowledge. The New Age movement is essentially just a contrarian movement. It exists because of the Catholic Church. And you can read the biographies and the histories of the people who created the New Age movement. Like you have Anton Mesmer, Helena Blavatsky, Annie Besant, Helena and Nicholas Roerich, Aleister Crowley, Alice Bailey, I think I mentioned. All of these people grew up with extremely overbearing, strict Christian parents who punished them and abused them and ridiculed them and just made their lives very difficult. And they grew up in very strict Christian communities that were absolutely intolerant of seeking knowledge in other ways. And so they created the New Age movement as a reaction against their Christian upbringing. It wasn't so much that they were called to new knowledge and new pursuits of new knowledge. It was that they were simply against their own upbringing and found it dissatisfying. And you can see this when people like Rudolf Steiner started calling them out. They would get extremely angry with him. Annie Besant, Alice Bailey, Aleister Crowley, like you can see their anger against Christians. Like Rudolf Steiner was a Christian mystic or a Rosicrucian, whatever you want to call him. And they were angry with him when he taught Christianity within the Theosophical school to the point where they kicked him out of the Theosophical cult. And he was like, all right, whatever. And they're just venomous. They hated it. They hated Christianity. And so they weren't really trying to seek new knowledge through an Eastern lens. They were just trying to find anything that was not Christian and apply it. And they applied it incorrectly. There are a lot of mistranslations and misrepresentations of Eastern spirituality within the Theosophical and New Age movement. It's as though they didn't really care to get too deep into the Eastern thought. They were just perfectly satisfied that it was non-Christian. They went deep enough to be able to spread it amongst Westerners, and that was good enough for them. People who practice Theosophy don't really gain enlightenment, as, George Gurdjieff attests to. If you practice Theosophy, you become a self-aggrandized narcissist. And it's you become this, you gain a sense of self-importance. It just doesn't work, practicing Theosophical teachings. They got a little bit of truth here and there, but on the whole, it was just a reaction against Catholicism. It was not a call to higher knowledge. It was a reaction against... It's like what a rebellious teenager does against their parents. They're just like, I don't like this, I'm going to do my own thing. And they claimed it was a type of revelation, a type of disclosure. This New Age movement, they're like, we have the secrets that the Catholic Church kept from you. And to an extent, it was true. The Catholic Church doesn't want you studying things like meditation or Eastern philosophy. They'll tell you it's like Satanism, Hinduism is Satanism, or, you shouldn't practice yoga or meditation because it will open you up to demonic possession or what have you. And so, to an extent, the Catholic Church closed it, hid it, and then the Theosophical Society and the New Agers disclosed it or unhid it. And to an extent, that is true, which is why they have such a high following, a large following. And you can see the effects that these types of groups have on people. is now the New Age movement got into, from the very beginning, essentially from the very beginning, they're always also interested in another thing, not just religious teachings or spiritual teachings, but in exotic technologies. Annie Besant was associated with a man named John Keely, who invented a motor that allegedly ran on etheric energy, as opposed to electricity. This is a machine powered by ether, or vital forces, a sort of subtle energy field that penetrates all things, sort of like the Force in Star Wars. And so he allegedly invented machines that ran on ether instead of electricity. And when he died, his patents and technology allegedly went into the custody of Annie Besant of the Theosophical Society, and these objects and patents and notebooks and whatnot were moved to some secret location in India, where they allegedly remain to this day, or something like that. They're in the hands of some secret society or other whatever. They said in the 1890s, John Keely demonstrated for the American military or government an aircraft that could travel like 500 miles an hour. In the 1890s. This was before the Wright brothers and their toothpicks and paper airplane took off. And that's another thing that people think disclosure means, is disclosing the hidden technology that the government possesses. The Tesla the technology invented by Nikola Tesla, the technology invented by Ruth Drown, invented by Wilhelm Reich, invented by John Keely, and so on. Ed Leeds Skallman, who else? I mean, my books are turned around. There's plenty of people who invented etheric-powered devices, etheric-powered medical diagnostic tools, flying machines apparently, and engines that didn't use aerodynamics but used like electromagnetics or other gravity-altering technologies and things like that. We all hear the stories about this stuff. And so some people say, oh, disclosure is the government's going to tell us about the exotic technologies that they've had for the last 150 years. Some people say disclosure is going to tell us about, like, that this technology came from aliens from outer space, and that the government's going to tell us about aliens from space. Some people, the New Agers, will say it's disclosure about spiritual knowledge and higher dimensional beings, that, they're not aliens from space, but they're our spiritual family, the higher dimensional beings like angels and such like, and that the government's going to disclose this knowledge, and so on and so forth. And everybody has their own view. You have different people who have different views as to what disclosure even means. So when you have Dr. Stephen Greer, is he a doctor? Stephen Greer, the aliens guy, going to the government and asking for disclosure. He wants to know about UFOs and aliens and hyperdimensional beings and such, and that's his shtick. And you have other activists, like in the sort of vein of Vannevar Bush, John Trump, Donald Trump type people, who are like, let's get them to reveal the X technology, the exotic technology, which some people refer to with the monogram of the X. That, like, let's reveal all the special secret technology that we've been hoarding for, over a century or even thousands of years. And nobody agrees on what disclosure really is or how the government's going to handle it. And in the 90s, it was talked about a lot. It was mostly regarding the crash at Area 51, because in 1993, they started talking about the 1947 Roswell crash again. Like, it was swept under the rug in 47 and went dormant for almost 50 years. And in 93, some government whistleblower or some such thing started talking about the Roswell crash again. And then out comes Bob Lazar talking about Area 51. And then you have the movie from 1996 with Will Smith. It was directed by Roland Emmerich, called Independence Day, where they have that scene with Brent Spiner taking you into Area 51. a fictionalized version of Area 51 where they have the crashed alien craft from 1947 and they've been working on it and reverse engineering it and trying to understand it, and that put it into the public consciousness like, oh my god, is this true? Like, is there an Area 51? Does it have crashed alien technology? Let's find out. And you had all these protests and pushes on the government to disclose what they know about, did you really recover 4 aliens from the New Mexican desert? Do you really have these crashed vehicles from space? And it was this whole thing, and it was in the mainstream news, and it was in mainstream Hollywood movies, and it really got into the public consciousness. And then it just kind of fizzled out. Nothing really happened to it. The world got knocked back to sleep in 2001 for obvious reasons, the mass death ritual that was committed against us. And everybody just kind of, if you questioned or protest the government, you were like labeled as a persona non grata. It was just not cool to ask the government to reveal their secrets anymore. It was, after the Patriot Act, it was an act of terrorism if you wanted the government to disclose things to you. And so it kind of put that whole thing to bed. And then it came out again recently, a few years ago. People started talking about disclosure again. But it comes up every few decades, and it's not a new thing, trying to bring this stuff out. It happens over and over again. It's been happening for centuries. And you just have to pay attention to who's talking about it and why. So a few historical examples we have, and I'll bring it up to today. In like the 14th and 15th centuries, you had the Great Schism, right, of the Catholic Church. You had the Parisian popes and the Roman popes, and they were against each other. You had like the Russian Orthodox Church was like just doing its own thing. You had this whole Christendom split up, and people were pointing out the corruption of the Catholic Church, the corruption of Rome, and the sexual abuses and the monetary abuses and the political abuses and the war crimes and this and that and the other thing. And so you had all these people like John Wycliffe and John Russ, or Huss, sorry, can't read my own handwriting, John Huss. And they're like, oh, there's so much corruption, there's so much war, there's so much poverty, there's so much chaos going on. Like, this is the book of Revelation. These are the tribulations. Christ must be coming soon, and he's going to establish his new government, and we're going to live in a utopia soon, because like everything, the government is so corrupt right now that this must be the end times. This must be when Christ comes from the sky and sets up his utopia. This has to be it. You have people who've been saying that since 2012. Today, like, oh, everything is so corrupt and everything is so awful and there's so much poverty and war and yada yada, that these must be the end times. This must be the time that Christ is going to come and show up and establish his kingdom on earth. Must be. Well, it wasn't 600, 700 years ago. What are the chances that it is today? You have in the 1800s, well, okay, before then you have like the 1620s and such. You have like the Rosicrucians and Jacob Burma. They're like, oh, War of the Roses, corruption here, Protestantism, another sort of schism in the church where the Protestant movement split off from it and everybody's yelling at the Pope and how corrupt the kings are and all that sort of stuff. And Jacob Burma is saying the tribulations are coming soon. He was this great Christian mystic. And Jesus is right around the corner. He's coming. He's coming like next week. Next week. This is it. This is as corrupt as the world can ever be. Jesus is coming. He's going to set up your utopia now. We're going to reveal, we're going to disclose all the spiritual knowledge. We're going to disclose all the evil secret societies that have been corrupting our civilization. And Christ is going to get rid of them. The second coming is going to happen. God's going to throw his stone at the earth and purify the whole world and yada yada. The statue of Nebuchadnezzar is going to crack. And the mountain of God will be established, the kingdom of heaven will be established on earth, and so on. And that was all the parlance of the 17th century. You had Francis Bacon writing his New Atlantis, talking about how this is how you build a great scientific, advanced, with a touch of spirituality, civilization. Like, the New Atlantis, the new world, the Christianopolis of the other Christian philosophers, saying this is the great city that we have to build. and this is how you build a utopia. And you had all these utopian thinkers, Thomas More and so on, saying this is how you establish a utopia. Meanwhile, you have corruption in the government, and you have Christian mystics and prophets and false prophets and so on saying, this is it. This is the end times. This is how you establish utopia. We're going to reveal all this special technologies, all this special laws and legislation and policies and economics and civil infrastructure that we can build, that we've been keeping it a secret since the times of Atlantis or since the times of the pre-flood world. And now we're going to reveal these things to you and build a nice, beautiful utopia. And this is why England created the Dutch East India Company. The different corporations were formed to colonize the Western world because they wanted to build their utopia here in America. And they attempted to do it because, they were millenarians, essentially, thinking we're going to build a utopian civilization based on the revelations of ancient knowledge or spiritual knowledge or scientific knowledge or some such thing like that. For the colonies, for these corporations, it was mostly scientific knowledge. They were like, Protestants allowed scientism within their ranks, free inquiry of material phenomena, whatever you want to call science, and they allowed that to blossom under their patronage, and those scientific-minded people went to the United States, where they can then, England, Germany, and the United States, where they could practice these things, revealing the nature of reality, disclosing the nature of reality to create a new civilization, a new type of government, a new type of philosophy for the people to believe in, new types of laws, new types of economics, and so on, because they claimed to have secret knowledge, or the abilities to uncover secret knowledge, to disclose secret knowledge. And whenever a civilization gets corrupt enough, you have this primordial impulse within people to be like, we're obviously doing something wrong here in reality, so we need to uncover the principles of reality and regenerate our civilization in some way. And when this impulse, it's a natural impulse and natural desire to do these things, arises, it can be manipulated and taken advantage of by what you would call actors in bad faith, bad people who would want to exploit you, set up their own power structures. And it just happens all the time. And you need to be aware that this concept of revelation, apocalypse, disclosure is a constantly recurring theme in civilization. And this is how governments rise and fall. When people point out corruption, talk about how, I'm the guy who has all the answers, so let me create a new government for you. Let me create a new religion for you. Let me create some new policies, a new economy, a new type of city to live in, new technologies, a new religious system to believe in. I got all the answers, I'll disclose it for you. And you have people who are genuinely loving and compassionate and are like, okay, I'm going to teach you some real spiritual stuff, and you can regenerate yourself, and if every individual regenerates themselves, then civilization will be regenerated. And then you have false prophets who are like, let me tell you how it is. Let me tell you what to think. And follow me, and I'll set you free. Vote for me, I'll set you free. And so you always have those two streams that appear during times of crisis. You have prophets and false prophets. Today, we have way more false prophets than prophets, but we also have more prophets than we've ever had. Mostly because our numbers as the human race are very, very large, so you get more of both kinds. But there is a disproportionate number of false prophets. Today, you have disclosure that comes in the shape of aliens and UFOs and what the government knows. Whereas in centuries past, it might have been scientific doctrine that was like, let me disclose for you the scientific method. Before then, it was, let me disclose to you the real teachings of Christ. Okay. Now it's, let me disclose to you what the government's been hiding from you. Special technology. Knowledge of aliens. Knowledge of, there are people who think disclosure is just about revealing the conspiracy, the cabal, the shadow government, the people that pull the strings from behind the scenes. That's what disclosure is, pointing them out, shining a light on them and saying, this is who's been messing with you. These are the people who are trying to enslave you or corrupt your world. That's what some people think disclosure is. It's got nothing to do with UFOs or aliens or spirituality. It's just find all the criminals, Find all the criminals and the tyrants, shine a light on them, put them in jail, whatever. That's disclosure. So you have all this coming out, and it's all blended together these days. You have the New Age spiritualists, you have the Christian apocalyptists and eschatologists, you have the people who are against the conspiracy or the cabal, you've got the people who are interested in UFOs and aliens and spaceships, and you got the people who are interested in exotic technology, and they all kind of rub elbows with each other, they all kind of move, they kind of are like a Venn diagram, they kind of get in with each other, and they kind of keep each other separate, but it all sort of blends together. And there are groups who understand this blending together, and they can take advantage of it quite easily, and obviously the intelligence agencies are the most expert at this. You had, I think it started in 2019, you had the so-called To the Stars Academy. It was a CIA operation, fronted by the likes of Lou Elizondo and Jim Semivan and John Ramirez and all these CIA officers who are like, yeah, we're going to tell you about the spaceships and the aliens and the government cover-up and yeah, this is this great thing. And it was like this thing that people could give their money to and sign up for, like some type of online school or learning environment. They had Tom DeLonge, of all people, the singer of Blink-182, as sort of their front man, their spokesman, to kind of make it hip and cool. Because, back in the 90s and early 2000s, he used to talk about aliens and stuff. He has those old Blink-182 songs about aliens and stuff because he's always been interested in it. And he's what's known as a useful idiot. And he'll believe whatever the CIA tells him to because he's not a very bright guy. I mean, I'm not knocking the guy. I used to listen to his music when I was a kid. He was inspiring. But he's a useful idiot. And, why would the CIA, people who are still contracting with the CIA, tell you the truth about what the CIA covered up in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s? Why would they tell you the truth? Who could possibly believe that these CIA officers in To the Stars Academy are going to tell you the truth about flying saucers and aliens and what have you? And they can't even get their story straight. They don't agree with each other. Some are like, oh, it's nuts and bolts spacecraft, aliens from other planets. The likes of John Ramirez says that. Then Jim Semivan, who's John Ramirez's buddy, is saying, well, no, it's this more subtle reality. They're not just nuts and bolts spacecraft. It's this mystical reality that's all around us all the time. And suddenly, after a couple of years of this, Semivan and Ramirez are starting to talk about, oh yeah, I'm actually contactee. I've had contacts with aliens since the 90s. I've been visited many times. I've had poltergeists and paranormal phenomena occur to me. It's like, well, why didn't you say that before? Why are you just suddenly saying that now? Where were you in the 90s? Why didn't you want to disclose this in the 90s when disclosure was a big thing? You've been contracting with the CIA since the 90s. Why are you just saying this now? Why is everybody suddenly talking about this now? Why is Newsweek posting videos of Tic Tacs from the Sodalite cameras on a Navy ship, saying this is a new Tic Tac photo or video of a UFO buzzing a Navy ship? This video was released in 2020. The video was from 2007, but the Navy intelligence and CIA want you to think this was some new video that they just recorded of a UFO buzzing a Navy ship. And everybody's just talking about it now, and then UFOs over Chinese airports, and someone called 911 a few days ago in Las Vegas because they said they saw a gray alien in front of their door. People found out that was a hoax, but the 911 is like, no, the call was real. The call wasn't a hoax. And it's like, no, we believe the call was real, but who made the call? Was it real? We saw the doorbell footage of the alleged gray alien. Why is that? Why should we believe it's real? Because it's on the mainstream media, and the CIA is revealing this story to us. Why would we believe it's real? And you have another alleged CIA whistleblower. He says he's a former CIA agent named Daryl Sims, who then says aliens don't exist. They are genetic creations of the shadow government around the world. They created these little creatures in a laboratory. so like the CIA says these three different things. They're aliens from space with nuts and bolts spaceships. They're not aliens from space. They're clones that were made by the shadow government. And the UFOs you see are just technology that humans have and have created. And then you have Jim Semivan saying that it's like a spiritual phenomenon or a paranormal phenomenon. And, the thing is, there is truth to all three of these things, which is why people believe it, because it speaks to that primordial part of you that rings true. Your intuition is like, there is truth to this. This feels truthful. Because some of it is. But why would a CIA officer want to tell you this? Out of the goodness of his heart, Lou Elizondo saying, that we got to just get the government to tell us these things. It's like, you are the government. You've been in the government. What are you talking about? You're like against the government, but you're working for the government. Like, which is it, pal? And no one has asked him, are you still contracting with the CIA? No one has asked him that question. You could just ask him that question, put this whole thing to bed, because the answer is fucking yeah. He is still contracting with them. He still works for them. He's not a former agent. There's no such thing as a former CIA officer. Once an asset, always an asset. And so why would we believe anything that they have to say? The government has no vested interest, no interest in telling you the truth. It will undermine their power. If they have been covering these things up since the 1890s, if they have possession of exotic technology, whether it's from space or whether it's from Atlantis, whether aliens made it, whether humans made it, doesn't matter. If they have this technology, it gives them an advantage over everybody else. They have no interest in telling you about it. And if they do start telling you about it, it's because they want you to view it in a certain way. Now, I think disclosure has been discussed in the mainstream again over the last 3 years because it's being discussed seriously in the non-mainstream, in the underground, in the fringe. And the fringe is not so fringe anymore. The fringe is now a large number of people around the world who are interested in this subject. And so the CIA talking about these things, the government talking about these things, mainstream media talking about these things is a form of damage control. They want to steer your mind down certain corridors. They want you to believe certain things, or they want you to be confused about certain things. So they'll tell you that, it's aliens. No, it's a spiritual thing. No, they're genetic creations. It's made by aliens. No, it's made by humans. They're going to tell you all this stuff just to confuse the shit out of you and make sure that you can't come to your own conclusions. They're not going to equip you with how to think about these things for yourself. And you can see that when these people are guests on like the Joe Rogan show or the George Knapp Coast to Coast show, and you have like all these UFO researchers who are gullible and falling for the CIA line and interviewing them, and they just say, believe me, this is how it is. This is what I know. This is what the programs I worked in. This is what the government does. And they don't tell you how to do this research. They don't tell you how to verify any of it. They don't tell you how to think about it for yourself. They just say, this is it. These are the facts. You have to believe me. You have to trust me. This is how it works. And it's like, well, prove it, pal. And they don't, because they don't have proof, because it's a psyop, because it's probably not true. They're just doing damage control, trying to control your mind and how you think about these things. So, like, rule of thumb, if the government says it, don't fucking believe it. That's a bit of a pessimistic rule of thumb, but it generally works. And it kind of goes the same with the New Agers. They have the same agenda from a different angle. They want you to think in spiritual things, but it's like they will tell you what to think, because a lot of these New Agers are like, I'm a medium. I'm a psychic medium, and I get visitations from angels, and this is what they told me. I get visitations from higher dimensional alien beings from other worlds, and this is what they say, and this is how the truth is, and this is how the world works, and this is what's happening, and disclosure. You have to raise your vibration, and the world will know disclosure. It's like Martin, what's his name, from the 18th century, from the 19th century. Oh boy, that French guy during the post-French Revolutionary period. Thomas Martin, that was it. He said he got visited by the Archangel Raphael, telling about like, there's going to be trials and tribulations for France, and here's the spiritual revelation for the New Age. Just let Let the Sun Emperor of Napoleon rule the world, yada yada. And it's like, this John Martin guy, he might have just been working for Napoleon III. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Or Napoleon II, rather. Who knows? He could have just been like an intelligence agent trying to trick the Christian world into accepting the Imperium of France. Like, who's to say that wasn't the case? Because that's the effect that it had. People believed him. He had his own cult, and it was like an officially sanctioned cult from the government. And like, oh, the Napoleon lineage is going to save the world and bring order to the chaos of France and to the chaos of Europe. And everybody just believed it. It was like, okay, we'll put our faith in the emperors of France and just go along with that program. I don't know. So when you hear CIA officers that they're just doing it for the good of humanity. We're going to disclose, I'm going to blow the whistle for your benefit. I'm putting my life at risk for you because I'm a hero. I'm such a great guy blowing the whistle on that stinky old corrupt government and the stinky old secret societies that control them from the shadows. Oh, listen to what I got to say that'll save your civilization from criminals and dastardly people and corruption and ignorance. Oh, I got the revelation for you. I got the disclosure for you. Just do what I tell you to do. You know? When you start seeing things in the sky, just go with it. Just listen to what I tell you about it. I'll tell you what the truth is. I'll tell you why you're seeing those lights in the sky more and more often, why you're hearing those strange sounds in the atmosphere more and more often, why you're hearing those explosions underground more and more often. Let me tell you what's happening. Don't research it yourself. Just believe what I tell you. Because I used to be an insider. I know things that you don't. I will disclose what hath been closed. And it's putting themselves at a differential advantage over you. I know what's been closed. I can disclose it. I have the keys to the secret. You do not. You must trust me if you want to know these things. New Agers do the same thing. I'm a psychic. I've been contacted by the Pleiadians, and this is how reality works. Let me tell you. Believe me, if you want disclosure to live in a utopia, then the collective of the human race has to raise their vibrations so that the higher dimensional beings can exist in the space with us. Because we're so low vibrational that they can't enter into our world and we can't see them. But they want to help us. And the only way for them to help us is if we all collectively raise our vibration. And so the idea of disclosure is always this collective thing, this great world-shattering, world-changing event that's going to happen to everyone all at the same time. We're all going to awaken together. We're all going to have the new technology together. We're all going to achieve higher states of consciousness together, all at once. But you got to do it the way I tell you to do it, otherwise it's not going to work. And if 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, 100 years go by and it didn't work, well, it's because you didn't listen to me. You did it wrong. You all didn't raise your vibration enough. You all didn't do what the government told you enough. It's your fault that disclosure didn't happen. It's all nonsense. It's just a mythologization of personal enlightenment, essentially. An individual can become liberated from their shit life, from suffering, from karma. You can practice Raja Yoga for 30 years and experience higher states of consciousness. You can establish ethical behavior and earn the grace of God, and you can achieve enlightenment. And the more you achieve enlightenment, you sort of exude it out to the people around you, to the environment around you, to the whole world even, in a non-local sense. And yeah, you can raise the vibration of people. Sure, this is rooted in truth, but it's more of an individual thing. To say that the whole world is going to change all at once in an apocalyptic way where disclosure is just going to happen one day. The spaceships are going to come down and aliens are going to shake hands with the president and the angels are going to make prophets of us all and we'll all be speaking in tongues and having spiritual visions and the technology will purify all the pollution in the atmosphere and in the oceans and the earth will be restored with the X technology and the angels will sing and their trumpets will blow and the aliens will rejoice and all will be well and good in one single afternoon. It's a bit ridiculous to think something like that would happen. Because people have been saying that for 6,000 years now. Oh, it's going to happen today. Maybe not today, tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe next year. Maybe 10 years from now. All right, couple centuries from now, it'll happen, I promise. And it just keeps getting pushed back further and further into the future. And it never happens. Sure, civilizations collapse and people think it's the apocalypse, but then a new civilization arises and it's back to square one, and well, the apocalypse is in the future. Are you a pre-millenarian, a post-millenarian? Is Christ going to come back before the tribulations? Is Christ going to come back after the tribulations? Is the X technology going to be revealed before the Cabal enslaves us? Or is the X technology going to be revealed after the Cabal enslaves us? Are the white hats going to defeat the black hats? Are the black hats going to defeat the white hats? And all this stuff that people like to speculate about. And no one can prove any of it either way. No one can prove whether this X technology exists. We know through experience that something strange goes on. We see lights in the sky. People have revelatory visions and psychic experiences. You know, the government obviously has strange gadgets that can stop your heart and make you hear voices in your head, and all the exotic technologies and HARP and weather control. Yeah, we know this stuff. But whether or not the whole world is going to know it all at once, or accept it, or it's going to be proven to us all at once, whether these spiritual revelations are going to occur all at once, it's not very likely, in my opinion, that it will ever happen, because people have been talking about it for thousands of years and it hasn't happened. Now, you might be saying, well, then it's bound to happen eventually. It hasn't happened, so we're due. We're overdue for it to happen. Yeah, you could say that. You could believe that. That's fine. But my opinion is, like, just don't worry about it that much. I mean, do you really think cataclysmic awakenings is the way forward? It could be. But how many innocent people get swept up in that? Who will lose their lives in that? People will lose their minds in that. All at once kind of a thing. There are so many people who aren't prepared for it. And, you know, the Bible says, like, oh, men will have heart attacks because they'll see things that scare the fucking shit out of them. And like, you know, that's disclosure all at once. People get so scared they die. You know, their children will start to prophesize, and the old men will have no idea what's going on. And this will all happen all at once. People in this generation will live to see it. Jesus was a millenarian. He said people in this generation will live to see these events unfold. Did they? I mean, some of them saw the collapse of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. That was kind of apocalyptic. The Romans kind of stomped all over Near Eastern civilization, and that was a bit apocalyptic. Sure, maybe that's what he was referring to. It's just deliberately confusing, the whole subject of disclosure. And people are going to try and get you to believe stuff. They want, like, I know I'm sharing a lot of my opinion, and I'm probably guilty of trying to get you to have the same pessimistic or at least cynical attitude that I have toward it. But you can disagree with me all you want. And that's fine. I encourage you to. But there are going to be lots of people that are going to give you what I call revealed dogma. The higher dimensional beings need you to raise your vibration. Or the CIA has been covering up alien bodies. Or secret societies have Atlantean technology that they've been hiding from you for centuries. Or what have you. This is the truth. This is the truth. Believe me, believe me, believe me. And some of it may be some of the truth. And some of it may be a lot of lies. But you can always judge a tree by the fruit it bears. And people in the past who have been the most successful when saying, I have disclosure knowledge, I have the knowledge of what's been hidden, the successful ones establish a new government, and then all they do is just have power over you. They control your minds, they enslave you, they take your money, they take your livelihood, they make you work for them all day, and they just take advantage of you. Which of these successful governments, whether it was the pharaohs of Egypt, the Catholic government of the medieval era, or the liberal materialist government of today that was founded in the 18th century by Freemasons, the Enlightenment governments that we have, the enlightened liberal scientific governments that we've had for, 250 plus years. What good have they done, any of us? What good have they done? They claim disclosure, they claim secret special knowledge, they claim if you follow my government you'll have super special knowledge and then you'll live in a better world. It'll be better, I swear, I promise you it will be better if you just believe in me and let me rule over you. And it's never true. It's never better. Quality of life, remains the same. For every advance and every piece of progress that we have as a civilization, there's an equal detriment that comes along with it, and therefore quality of life always remains the same. Sure, we can live up to 75 years today, but the world is polluted and we got loud airplanes everywhere. Technology didn't make it any better. The net benefit and the net detriment equalized our quality of life. You live to be 35 years old, you get killed by a saber-toothed tiger, 40,000 years ago, but at least you could drink the river water, and there were no cities or pollution. Net quality of life is the same. So whenever people say, oh, revelatory technology, revelatory new legislation, revelatory new government, follow me. It will be better, I promise. You should be skeptical. And the early Catholic government was just like the New Agers. Believe in me. This is the higher spiritual knowledge. We'll create a better civilization. But you have to do exactly what I tell you to do. You have to believe exactly the way I reveal it to you. Otherwise, I'm going to punish you. And then it merges with the UFO cults and the disclosure of aliens. They want you to fear aliens, or do think, one side of the government wants you to fear aliens so that they can weaponize space, give more money to military industrial corporations and aerospace corporations. Other sides want you to believe that there are saviors and shit like that. But the whole concept of disclosure is essentially there to manipulate you and get you to alter your behavior. Whether it's well-intentioned or poor-intentioned or evil-intentioned, whatever. Whether you got New Agers trying to get you to raise your vibrations or CIA officers trying to get you to bow down to their superior technology and military prowess, whatever the intention is these people are trying to get you to alter your behavior and alter your beliefs and alter your worldview and agree with them. So no matter how well-intentioned the New Agers are, they're trying to get you to believe something and behave accordingly. And no matter how evil-intentioned the government may be, or the cabal, the criminals, the conspiracy is, and you can see through them, they're trying to alter the behavior of people who can't think for themselves, who are gullible. And we've seen over the last 3 years just how gullible people are with the so-called health crisis that occurred in 2020 and has been reverberating ever since. We've seen how fear-based thinking and gullibility works. We see that an unfortunately high number of people are extremely gullible and fearful and will do whatever the government tells them to do. And so if they're manufacturing a fake UFO threat, many of these people will believe it, unfortunately. If the New Agers want to manufacture a pseudo-spiritual utopia that they will be the gurus and leaders of, I would be very skeptical of them too, because that's what the Catholic Church was. They were rebellious against their government, which was the Roman Imperium, and established their own government, Catholicism. They overthrew the Roman Imperium from within itself. The Christian mystics were just this rebellious group. They fed them to lions and they cast them to the fringes, but they eventually succeeded in taking over the Roman government. The UFO cults and the New Agers are the same. They're fringe. Everybody laughs at them just like they laughed at the early Christians. They got all these crazy mystic ideas, just like the Christians had these crazy mystic ideas. They got these ideas of space brothers and the higher dimensional beings that are going to give us a utopia the same way the early Christians said Jesus was going to give us a kingdom of heaven on earth. And everybody laughed at them and ridiculed them until they took over the fucking government. They won! As much as the Christians were fed to lions and persecuted and massacred and laughed at and pushed to the fringes, they still succeeded. So don't underestimate the UFO cults and these New Agers who are like, I'm just raising my vibration over here. They're setting themselves up to be the gurus of you, to tell you what to think. They want to be your leader. They want you to depend on them. And look at them with their fingernails and their makeup and their glamorousness and their this and that, and do my morning routine and believe this and pay for my tarot readings and all of this. Like, come on. These people are very superficial, borderline narcissistic. They care so much about their public-facing appearance. They got 1 million subscribers on YouTube, 10 million TikTok followers, and they're like, I know the truth of the spirituality. Follow me. I'm so great. I'm so wise. I'm a psychic. Woo, look at me. They make a lot of money doing this stuff. They get off on the power they have over you. You give them all these positive comments of how wonderful they are, how wise they are, and they're like, ooh, I must be special. I must be doing something right. This is wonderful for me. And it's a huge ego stroke for them. Now, I'm not throwing all of them under the bus. There are some good ones out there. But my, oh my, are there many bad ones. And they all claim disclosure. They all claim to have revelation. The psychic, the higher dimensional beings told them this, so you better believe it. It will improve your life if you agree with me. The thing that I want you all to walk away with today. Sorry, this whole video was like a rant. If you made it this far, you're a trooper. And thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'd be very interested in hearing your thoughts on all of this. Disagree with me, debate with me. That's totally welcome. You've got the comments section below. Whatever. It's great. I love it when I engage with the audience. But if there's anything I want you all to take away from this is just think for yourself. And just take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Learn how to follow your own intuition and your own reason. I believe that the path of reason is superior to the path of revelation. I believe in personal experience and verification over taking anyone else's word for anything. Now, I'm not saying to distrust people. Perhaps people did really get visited by the archangel Michael and they were told the God's honest truth. But how do you know? How do you know? So these things could be true, these things could be false. How do you know? The path of reason, in my opinion, will always be superior to the path of revelation, the path of personal experience that you can soberly reflect upon, because many experiences can be deceptive. The CIA, shadow government, the cabal, the conspiracy, whatever you want to call them, they have access to mind-altering technologies, mesmerism and hypnotism, mind-altering drugs, memory-altering methodologies, and so on. They can make you think you had an experience that you really didn't have. And you need to be able to soberly discern the difference between a genuine mystical and revelatory experience versus a trickster phenomenon. And nobody can really tell you how to do that, except you must have self-awareness. You must practice self-awareness. You must remember yourself constantly. And I'm not trying to have you in a paranoid state doubting all of your perceptions, because that can lead to a type of unhealthy schizophrenia. So I would never encourage that. I don't want to push any borderline personalities over the edge into paranoid schizophrenia, so I apologize if that leads to that. I don't want that. But to have a sober self-reflection, if you've had intense mystical experiences or contact experiences, like what really happened? How can you verify what really occurred to you? And maybe you shouldn't take anything at face value, even your own experiences. And you can verify your own experiences by developing your intuition. Developing intuition is key. Intuition is like the voice of God. And you can develop and strengthen your intuition, your conduit to the God's honest truth. And that's through self-awareness practice. Just remember yourself constantly. Study Gurdjieff, Ouspensky's book, something about miracles, In the Search of the Miraculous, I think it's called, is the best book on Gurdjieff's teachings you'll ever find. And it just, very simple, self-awareness practice. Develop your intuition. Trust yourself. Learn to trust yourself. Learn to verify with a sober mind. Not to get swept away by your mystical experiences, but to soberly reflect upon them. Understand how your mind works. Turn your mind on the mind so that the mind can discover the mind and how it works, its mechanisms. And don't get swept up in mainstream hype, fringe hype, underground hype, overground hype, all the disclosure hype that surrounds us everywhere we go. It is all very seductive. It's all very sexy. It's all very revelatory. Not many people out there will tell you what I tell you, to think for yourself about it. People want the followers. People want your money. People want you to agree with them. People want to be the smartest guy in the room. People want to persuade you. And they will not teach you how to look through deceptions or bullshit, because if they teach you how to look through deceptions and bullshit, you might look through their deception. You might see right through their bullshit. So you gotta just be careful of these YouTube channels and bloggers and podcasters and former government officials who are saying, oh, listen to me. This is how it works. Why would they tell you these things? Why would they say these things? Out of the goodness of their heart? Maybe I'm just a cynical pessimist, but I don't believe a lot of these people that wanted to trademark the term secret space program so nobody else could say it except for people from To the Stars Academy, people going on Joe Rogan's podcast. No independent researchers could say Secret Space Academy because they tried to trademark the damn word. You have, the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, Moultrie. Moultrie. Do I have it written down? Ronald Moultrie. Last year had that Senate hearing where he wanted to make independent research into UFOs and the paranormal illegal. And he lumped me in with him. He named a few YouTube channels, including Third Phase of Moon, which is similar to the kind of stuff that I say. Just here's some facts, think for yourself. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you do. Think for yourself. This is how I think of it. This is how this guy thinks of it. Think for yourself. And the Undersecretary of Defense was like, no, we have to make that illegal because it goes against the government narrative. Only we can tell you what's going on. And the New Agers all argue with each other. Kind of the way I am, unfortunately. So, yeah, you can lump me in with them where they're like, oh, this New Ager doesn't get it. She's got it all wrong, or he's got it all wrong. I've got it correct. And I know. I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm doing it right now. But at least I'm not giving you revealed dogma. I trust in your ability to think for your damn self. And not to get swept up in the hysteria. Not to get sucked into seductive ideologies and beliefs because they offer quick and easy answers. Ooh, that sounds true, so I'll believe it wholesale. Oh, that sounds like it answers my question, so I'm going to subscribe to that. And just dive in feet first. You wind up giving away your sovereignty, giving away your reason, giving away your connection to your higher intuition. You're going to give it away to other people that are telling you what to think. Don't do that. I don't want you to do that. I want you to think God gave you reason and free will, or at least the ability to develop reason and the ability to develop free will. That you can achieve reason, you can achieve free will. And that's what I want you to do. And I don't want that kingly or queenly sovereignty to be stolen from you. It's yours. God crowned you king of your own life, or queen of your own life. And there is a huge push today to pull that crown from your fucking head. And don't let anyone do that to you. And disclosure is the most dastardly practice in doing this. Claiming revelation, claiming knowledge of apocalypse, claiming knowledge of that which has been hidden is one of the most effective ways of eradicating your freedom and sovereignty, of stealing it away from you and hoarding it for themselves and establishing governmental systems and authoritative systems over large numbers of people. And it's happening now. There are many factions vying for control. A power vacuum has been built over the last 100 years with atheism and scientism and liberalism and the weakness of government. The weakness of government has created various power vacuums. People don't trust their government anymore, which creates power vacuums. And there are many people who are seeking to fill those power vacuums, and they don't give a flying fuck about you. They pretend to, but they don't. And they will steal your sovereignty in a heartbeat. In fact, it is their very goal to steal your slack, to steal your freedom, and keep it for themselves. Disclosure is the most dastardly method of doing this. So be alert, be aware, be vigilant, be sober, Be very, very sober-minded when people talk about disclosure. Find out who these people are, who pays their bills, why they're saying what they're saying. Study some psychology, study some economics, study some political science, study some all that. And find out, who are these people talking about these crash flying saucers? Who are these people talking about higher dimensional beings? Who are these people on these blogs, these radio shows, these YouTube channels, these TikTok, what do you call them, channels? Who are they? Who's paying their bills? Why are they saying these things? And what is the fruit that this tree is bearing? And look for the historical precedences that I mentioned before. So, hopefully this has poured some cold water on you, has poured some coffee down your gullet, has pulled the scales from your eyes, and hopefully you will all be slightly more sober-minded regarding this strange topic, and just don't get swept up in it. It's a fad. It comes up every 20, 30, 40, 50 years, every 100 years or so. People start talking about disclosure. It's not a new thing. They want you to think it's a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's an old tactic that they pull out of their hat again and again and again to establish a new government. That's all it is. It's generally all it is. They want to establish a new government. They want to establish a new religion. They want to undermine your past and your ancestral memory, make you rootless and not grounded to any traditional knowledge, and then they will offer you a new tradition to believe in, so that they have then successfully refreshed their mind control over you. Every few centuries, their mind control starts to wear off. They have to refresh their mind control over the masses through this type of ritualistic language, propaganda, and so forth. Making wonders in the sky, using their strange sorcery and technologies to give you strange experiences, lights in the sky, contact experiences that you can't verify, and just tricking you and mind controlling you, and then claiming that they have the secrets to what those experiences mean. Just think for yourself. Believe what you want, but I urge you to not believe anything. Beliefs get in the way. Simply say, Jan is no. I don't know. Be okay with saying, I don't know. What is this phenomenon? I don't know. I've got lots of theories. I do lots of research, but I don't know what it is. I don't have beliefs this way or that. I understand the many different possibilities it can be in. I've had certain experiences. I have certain ideas of what it might be, but I don't know what any of it is. And you have to learn to be okay with that. Keep learning, keep researching, keep searching your inner self, keep searching for knowledge, but don't become deceived, attached to, or seduced by revelations from other people. You can learn these things on your own, or with the help of trusted people who are also learning on their own. Just don't believe the revealed dogma. And that's all I've got to say. So thank you very much for watching this video. Sorry for the impassioned rant that it was, but I just felt called to do this because I'm getting kind of sick of everything I'm seeing in the mainstream and in the substream and in the underground and on the fringe and in the overground and everything in between. I'm getting sick of it. And nobody has the decency to tell you what I just told you, to think for your fucking self. They're all trying to persuade you. I'm not. The only thing I want to persuade you of is to arm yourself against being persuaded. So take my video as practice. Don't even let me persuade you. How about that? How's that for ironic catch-22? Don't even be persuaded by me to not be persuaded. Anyway, you're the best. You're great. You're doing just fine. You are loved. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.